Buddy, Jason Mancuso here with Scott Tantalo today, Anthony Butera team at Keller Williams Realty. Scott, how long have you been with us now? How long have you been in the business? Let's start there.
Been in the business since 2008,
Okay.
and with the Butera team since just finished my 4th year.
2008, you're the longest in the tooth
Yeah,
of anybody. I was first licensed in 09, so you just got me beat there, but I didn't get into it full time until 2012. So yeah.
yeah,
the
full time
most-
for me in 2012 also.
There
so.
you go. All right, cool.
Yep.
Scott's one of our top dogs. Has a great business that he's built over the years. Does it all: buyers, sellers, investors. He covers a lot of ground. So it's been long overdue to get you out here. So
Yeah.
as I've said before, I want to get a lot of people involved this year with the podcast moving forward. So
Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to chat it up and spread the knowledge.
there you go, exactly. So today we want to kind of have a seller theme to it. We got a few things to touch on, but what are we in? 3rd week of January now. Just had our first 2 feet of snow dumped on us and looking pretty wintry out there at this point.
Yep.
Just got off the phone with another one of our agents who had a listing in Webster. Can't say exactly what it sold for, but more than $50,000 over asking price. They had a really good amount of showing time availability, but every single time slot booked. 40 something showings, I think, a dozen offers. The standard conversation that we've been having with this market over especially the last 2 years, but since we've been experiencing the seller's market, it's just the extreme conditions are still here. Like we've said before, predictions are tough to make.
Absolutely.
I guess so far into this year for the New Year's prediction, 2022 is like it's going to be the same, maybe a step below the extreme level that it's been at the last 2 years. But with this listing so far, doesn't seem to be the case. So
And what's creating that need to pay so much over list price for a house?
Well, I think it's it's everything that we've beaten to death over the years now, but the inventory right now, today's January 19th, is lower than it's ever been. Right. It's been low. The data's coming out for the fall, Q4 of 2021, coming out for December, and it's just we've been able to say before that things haven't really dropped off a cliff inventory-wise. It's just that the demand has been that much higher. Now we're getting to the point data-wise where it's showing that, okay, these are now extreme lows.
Right.
So we have that much less supply. We have a buyer pool out there that's still, very strong. And if anything, getting a sense of urgency behind them because we know the rates are going to go up. They've already been starting to go up. Mm-hmm. And it's inevitable that it's going to continue to increase throughout this year. Is it going to get to a point where it's unaffordable? Hopefully not. But I think, just again, a perfect storm of everything involved gets us to, that conversation we just had. Here's a listing that was priced aggressively and went tens and tens of thousands of dollars over asking with multiple people in the same range. I think, as an aside, I think it's important to note that when we talk about these bidding wars taking place, it's not that like there's just one guy who comes in and blows everybody else out of the water and they're the idiot that overpaid for the house, right?
Right.
Everybody's in line. There sometimes there ends up being like tiers of like, here's your, if there's 10 offers, just for easy number's sake, there may be 4 of them that are in the top tier, and then you get a few others that are kind of middle, and then, a couple, ultimately for any popular listing, there'll be some people that just throw out a low number,
right,
at asking price, right?
Yeah, and there's those price ranges too.
Yeah, exactly.
There's certain price ranges that are hotter than others.
Right, yep.
And the house if it's a 10, if it's move-in ready, if it's somebody can move in there and not have to turn a wrench,
Right.
that's what people want.
Exactly.
So those are the houses right now that are getting those crazy over asking price offers with ridiculous terms. We're seeing a lot more cash offers on the market these days. Yeah, it's tough to be a buyer, but if you're patient and you wait it out and you're willing to do a little bit of work,
Yeah.
you could still find a halfway decent deal out there.
There's I don't know, I hate saying it this way, but there's an ass for every seat. Right? Meaning that, like, yeah, you can be the buyer that only wants that 10 out of 10 grade house, and be in a competitive situation pretty much every time with that set. Because the buyers going after that house, like, you get the best of both worlds. You have the picky buyers and everybody else who's like, could go either way. You know, I'll take on a project, or I'll do this, or I'll do that, but this is perfect, so yeah, why not? And that buyer may be looking at it from the standpoint of like, okay, every other house that I've liked so far, I need to put 50 grand into it. This house, I don't have to do anything. Let me just put another 50 grand on top of my mortgage, or not more. And it kind of in a way becomes more affordable at that point, because you're talking 50 grand financed in this example versus 50 grand additional cash out of pocket to do some fixing when you've already, buying a home's no small task financially when you've already had that out of pocket expense.
Right.
So what conversations are you having with sellers, potential sellers, so far into January? What's your message? What are you talking to them about?
So obviously sellers are just as knowledgeable about the market as buyers are. They see what houses are going for, and they want to realize those expectations also. So a lot of times my job is to get them to look at comparables to their home. Yes, okay, that house down the street sold for X amount of dollars. Now let's compare that house to yours. What are the differences? What are the similarities? A lot of times it's not out of the realm of possibility that you could get that much, but we can't start at that price.
Yeah.
So I try and manage their expectations with, let's put a realistic number that's competitive enough to get as many people in the house and as many good qualified buyers and offers on the table as possible, and go from there.
Yeah. How often are you running into, it takes weeks, if not months, of planning to get a home listed versus, if you were to meet with a seller today, fresh, new, and, the house goes on the market by the end of the week? How much planning is involved with a listing? Let's ask it that way.
Yeah.
Listing your home for sale.
The first thing I always do is I have to go over and look at it.
Sure.
You can't go by just statistics and say this is the range your house will sell for. We have to go in there. You got to compare apples to apples. So I go in there. I give a long list of recommendations, and again, they're recommendations. They're not have tos.
Right.
You don't have to do this, but I'm recommending it if you want to realize that number that other people are getting. Right.
Well, especially that the last part there is the key, right? A recommendation can quickly turn into a have to if you need the number that this house got. Again, like you said, apples to apples, right? Right now, your house isn't an apples to apples comparison.
Right.
You're an orange. They're the apple. That sold for $250. You may be only looking at $200 if you don't do this.
And depending what their plan is,
Right.
Are they looking to purchase?
Right.
Well, we might have to do this work to make it apples to apples, so you can realize that number, so you have the money to make your purchase.
Sure. And at the end of the day, it's all got to make financial sense and logistic sense and all of that, because, you just can't fit a square peg in a round hole, especially when it comes to, our client's financial situation, right? Like, just because this needs to be done doesn't mean that the resources, financial or otherwise, are always there to get it done.
And that's always the big hesitation too on a seller's thing. Why would I list my house when I have no place to go?
Right.
Yeah. So we always have that conversation with, we're not going to leave you homeless.
Yeah.
There are things that we can negotiate on your behalf to where you're not going to be homeless. You can stay in your house. You can do a post-possession. Maybe we look at an alternate place to live for a little while we continue to look. But
give me take a step back. I mean, post-possession, I feel like, is a term pre and post possession gets thrown around. Define that for, the newbies here in the audience.
Sure. So on the seller standpoint, if you have a closing date, keys are turned over to the new owner that day. You can either move out that morning and leave it vacant for them,
Right.
or you can negotiate some sort of post possession where maybe you put on a small deposit, maybe do a short rent back to enable you to move into your next place. And not have that, especially this time of year with all the
Right.
snow. I mean, I get it. Moving is stressful enough. It's tough.
So the ability, you've sold your home, it's closed, like check in hand,
Yep.
right? Like you no longer own the home,
You
but you have the ability to stay in it for, some defined period of time, right? Like it's not open-ended.
Right.
And it could be a couple days for moving purposes, could be, we've done it for literally months.
Yep.
Example would be like if a seller's building a house that's not finished.
Very common.
It's pretty common, right? And that's something that's kind of I hate to say a trick of the trade, but something that we utilize often that a lot of times, gets overlooked or isn't thought about from, I don't know, just like a common knowledge standpoint without being, entrenched in the industry like we are. Right?
Yeah, and we represent a builder, and we do a lot of new builds, and have clients that come in that have this situation where nobody wants to move twice.
Sure,
I
yeah.
totally get it.
Yep.
So timing of their house to put on the market is very important,
Yep.
and the closing of that. So I would say 90% of the time there is a post possession agreement when somebody's building a house that they get to stay in their current residence.
Right.
And this type of market, buyers are flexible.
Yeah.
Buyers get it.
Well, they know they have to be, right? They've been
Right.
forced to be flexible over
Yep.
the years now, so that's the interesting aspect of it all. You mentioned 90% of the time with the building aspect. I mean, let's think about it this way too: selling a home or even buying, 90% of the time, there's like some sort of logistical dilemma that needs to be figured out.
Right.
Unless you're just dealing with a vacant home that you're moving into, or that you're buying, which happens often, but maybe 90% is high. But there's always something that we as realtors and the attorneys involved and lenders and everything have to kind of finagle, for lack of a better word,
Right.
on behalf of our clients to make sure, again, that either nobody's homeless or that, ideally you're not moving twice, and or dealing with storage and, stuff of that nature.
Yeah,
So,
timing is everything. Timing in real estate, it's always been about timing.
yeah.
And that's one of the things that we try and put clients at ease, whether they're buying or selling, that we'll work out the timing that works and is fair for everybody. Most of the time it works.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to be able to say like, hey, we're sitting here with a 100% track record of zero headaches, right? But I mean, we're pretty confident that it's nothing alarming in terms
Right.
of a rate. It's the logistics. Again, let's take a step back. This is the biggest, financial, but then also just, this is your home where you live is a huge aspect of life.
Yeah.
This is the biggest thing, for lack of a better word, thing that happens in people's lives. So, it's important to make sure all the details are ironed out, and those details can be, complicated at times in terms of, mixing and matching and trying to figure out, where to make a fit. So,
And important too for the buyer of a home to speak to their lender and say, when is my first mortgage payment actually due? So typically your first mortgage payment is paid at closing.
yeah.
So there might be a grace period there before your first mortgage payment is even due.
Correct.
That you can allow for a seller to stay rent free
Yeah.
for a little bit.
That's a huge thing that's often overlooked, and we can't necessarily just issue this as a blanket statement 100% of the time. But oftentimes, most of the time, I would go out to say, you close today, again, mid-January, your February mortgage payments rolled into
Right.
those closing costs. So now your mortgage payment isn't due to the first week of March. That's a lot of times ends up being a nice bonus for buyers that aren't told otherwise. But these details are what's important to get out. Like we started talking about, like that initial meeting, especially with sellers, where it's like, am I going to be able to go contingent or non-contingent? Stuff like that. How do I make the best of the situation? And that's an aspect that doesn't get talked about a lot.
Right.
Now, again, we got to confirm it with the lender that they're working with, but generally that's the case. So that's a huge buffer that gives that comforting feeling, because we can confidently, if we're in agreement with the game plan for selling a home. And by saying that means like the seller and us as listing agents, like, we're agreeing on the price, we're agreeing on the strategy. If that's the case, unless we're telling you like, hey, this is a shot in the dark, we're able to tell you like, look, you're not, if you're selling and buying a home, unless there's some timing aspect that you want to have double mortgage payments, meaning a mortgage payment due on a home you still own that you're selling and the new one that you just bought, we're able to pretty confidently tell you, like, you're not going to be in that situation.
Right.
And that aspect there that we just dove into is one of the reasons why. And, a lot of people in the industry will take that step to let them know that, hey, don't worry about it. You can be non-contingent and it'll all work out. They don't explain why. Mm-hmm. Once the sellers hear that, it's like, oh, okay.
That's why it's so important. Before you start working with anybody, you have to do either a seller consultation and a buyer consultation and go over all the possible scenarios and familiarize themselves with these terms and possibilities. Now, are we going to hit every single one? No, there's always going to be a wrinkle here and there.
Yeah.
But for the most part, if we have that consultation at the first time we meet them, go over all those different possibilities, it kind of makes it a little bit easier down the road if something does come up.
That step is huge because it allows us as agents to really provide the crash course, so to speak, the education initially in terms of like, hey, here's the expectations that we're going to set about the process and how it's going to work from our perspective. Here's everything that you should know for that initial conversation, and then also allowing the opportunity to get all their questions too. A lot of times that gets skipped, like you said, and it's either just like you get the call from a seller, and this is a great call for agents, but it's like, I want to list my house, get the photographer over here, and you're jumping the gun and find out there's all this other stuff in play that, okay, well, yeah, we can list it, but you're going to be 3 weeks out or whatever. And with buyers too, like the knee-jerk reaction is like, I mean, just get pre-approved, if you get that far, or just, a lot of times buyers are like, this house looks great, I want to see it, and start the process that way. And that can be, legwork in terms of having to make up for like, just lack of detail up front that then, gets revealed later. And it's like you're working backwards, right, at that point. So that's a good point. I mean, I think, buying or selling, anything real estate-wise, like start with, from the consumer end, why wouldn't you want to start with the consultation aspect? Like, why wouldn't you want to, like, get that crash course, on here's what this reputable professional is telling me, what I need to do or what I need to think about at least in order to get the process started.
Yeah, let me hear this from somebody who does this every single day.
Exactly.
Who has a pulse on the market, who knows what buyers are looking for.
Yep.
Right? Have them bring the agent in, sit them down for an hour, and get all your questions answered.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's usually that's the best way to start.
Yep.
Not ordering the photographer.
Yeah, it's, don't get me wrong, we have the ability to move quickly, right?
Sure.
And anybody does in this industry, but doing something as fast as you can, even if you're in a situation where there is urgency at the table, is not always going to lead to the best result.
Right.
Or, frankly, probably seldom leads to the best result, right? And when we were talking about, like, just take a step back and plan, we can literally be talking about a day. Mm-hmm. Like, let's just meet, plan this out, and set the game plan, hopefully is the goal of that meeting, right? And then start taking the action from there and knocking down the steps versus just, I want to go. And, you get it going, but then you realize, either when it's too late or when you're too far into it, they're like, okay, we should have done it this way instead.
Timing.
Exactly.
It's all about timing.
Yep.
You need time to research the market. You got to see what your competition is out there.
Yep.
You got to price it right.
Yep.
You got to show it in its best light. So that does take time.
Yep. Absolutely. So timing wise, the market right now in January, coming up on the end of January already, crazy. We've got February and then March, not to recap the months of the year here, but I mean, I always tell people that, because we talk to a lot of people all the time, and they're like, yeah, I'm 6 months out. My conversation with them is like, look, at 6 months in real estate time may as well be 2 weeks in your time. It's like dog years, March is right around the corner. March equals spring market, assuming we don't get, 3 snowstorms in the first week type of thing that kind of, gets people in a different mood, right?
Right.
But,
But now's the time to have that consultation. Now's the time to start working on those little things. Because if you truly need to go on the market in March,
yeah,
then have us over now.
absolutely.
So we're just that far ahead of the game come March.
Yeah, I would have rather if you had us over in the fall, but that's okay.
Right.
What about, from a timing perspective, somebody who had complete flexibility, whatever their situation is, they're not going to be homeless, they have a place to go, they're, moving out of state or already own another home that they're moving into. Hey, I want to wait for the spring market. What's your advice?
Well,
right now, today.
My advice is we are in a spring market. Look what everything is going for, right? Look how long houses are staying on the market, or how quickly houses are going off the market.
Right.
So for me, I like to do a snapshot of what the inventory is that's comparable to the house that we're going to sell and say, let's hit this when there's no competition.
Sure.
That's our best chance.
Yeah. And generally speaking, full circle to the start of the discussion, where we are right now because the inventory is that much shorter.
Right.
Or scarce.
Yeah.
And you're probably in that position where it's like you can be the only house in this neighborhood that's desirable. You got a great product. You're in the spring market.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this a lot too. I mean, the fall and the holidays, Thanksgiving and New Year's are kind of the seasonal period for us. We're out of that now. I'm not here to say like January is as popular of a real estate market as April, but just rankings wise, to recap, like spring, summer, number 2, January, winter, whatever you want to call it, 3, and then the fall.
Right.
So we're there, and you've got the opportunity now where like the inventory is that scarce that you have a competitive advantage by providing, product that can meet the demand. The demand is out there. We just, that listing that we just talked about, we had another one in Greece, similar story. I'm waiting to hear where that ended up at, but, packed showings, multiple offers, well over asking, like, you're going to see that now. You'll probably see it in the spring too. So, there may be elements of like it's a zero-sum game. You may end up selling it for the same number if you would 4 months from now. I mean, that's something we can never know, right? But you got to think of it potentially from a carrying cost standpoint too. If you got 4 extra months of, in this event where you don't need to own this home anymore and you got complete flexibility, then that could be the difference.
Right.
So,
yeah, people ask me all the time, what's my house going to sell for? What's my house worth? I love that question. I wish I had the crystal ball.
right.
It's worth what the market is willing to pay.
Yeah.
So what's the better question is, what's the number that I could list my house for
Yeah.
to get the absolute most I can?
To have it go up from there.
And terms are just as important as price.
And I shouldn't even say have it go up from there all the time. Not every listing is suited to have a bidding war, right?
Correct.
So at that point, what you just said still holds water in terms of like, okay, the flip side of the coin and strategy-wise is, okay, we need to list it here at our top-end number. If we can create the bidding war, great. Take it. That's turkey on or gravy on the turkey at that point. Otherwise, like, the name of the game is holding out for this number for a certain period of time. And if we, based on the market the way it is, if we can't get it, then we got to, I call it price discovery. We got to discover what price the market's going to agree with us at.
Right.
So yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
What else?
And the same conversation goes with buyers. I mean, they always ask the question, what is this house going to sell for?
Yeah.
So you got to turn it around and you have to tell them, like, well, what's it worth to you?
Sure. And on our end, like, we're not taking this approach to bullshit you or whatever, right? We're going to show you all the factual data.
Right.
And, like you just said, on buyers, we could talk to 3 different buyers about the same house. It's going to be worth something different to each of them for multiple reasons. Mm-hmm. As long as they're, our job is to, if they're just, they have to have this house as a buyer and like, it doesn't make sense, the number they're willing to pay for it. It's our job to be like, hey, let's take a step back. You saw this data I just showed you, right? Mm-hmm. You're like, on a different planet in terms of where this data is. Yeah.
That's where
you want, but I wouldn't recommend doing this.
I always support my client with whatever they want to do.
Correct.
But at the same time,
you have to be the advocate to get them to think differently.
Correct. Right? So I get them to think about, okay, so you're telling me you're going to stay in this house for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Well, probably not. Well, then maybe this number doesn't make sense.
Right. Then. There you go. Yep. Yeah, because
you're buying if you're paying that much, you're buying a 20-year home.
Yep.
If you're paying this much, maybe it's just a 5-year home, then you're on to the next one.
We have to think of it, and clients should think of it as like we're trying to protect people from being their own worst enemy, right?
Right.
Because this is a very emotional process, whether you're buying something or selling a home that you lived in. Emotions are involved, as they should be. That's why part of the reason why you have a professional to step in and just kind of like, if they're doing their job, they're being straight with you and like hitting you in between the eyes when needed to be like hey, we gotta rethink this, okay? Yeah. And I'm buying if you do have the buyer that says, hey, this is a forever home, take a seismic event to have it not be, mm-hmm. and we're comfortable financially with what we're talking about. We acknowledge that we're severely outside of the range of what the data says, in terms of what comparable properties are selling for, and we want this house this bad for this reason. And appreciate all that you're telling us, Scott, but we're okay with this offer that we're going to make, and let's let it rip.
Then we try and put it in its best, the offer in its best light, and right. Go with it. The other way I try and put a mindset to the buyer too is, they know more than anybody else what they're comfortable with the monthly payment.
Yeah.
Don't think of that number that you're offering so much as you are thinking about what my monthly payment will be at that number.
Yep.
Right. So if that's a number that you're comfortable with, and you really like the house, and you can see yourself living there, key question, can you see yourself living here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, otherwise, what are we talking about?
Then let's go for it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think that's huge, and that's, it's like part of my approach with buyers always is just, let's dig into the financial comfort zone first, and that monthly payment is the biggest aspect of that.
Absolutely.
That's what doesn't end, right? Unless you pay this thing off. And even then, if you get into higher price homes where sometimes taxes can be $2-3 a month alone, right?
And if you're buying it at a certain price,
right.
There's a very good chance your taxes will go up.
Correct.
So leave a little bit of buffer space in there on that monthly that comfortable monthly payment.
Yep.
To afford those taxes that probably will go up.
Making sure that gets analyzed with every single opportunity that they're looking at.
Yep.
And I mean, shout out to Premium Mortgage, who we work closely with, one of the best lenders in town. They have an app unique to each buyer that they're working with that allows us as agents and them as buyers to just easily punch in numbers at any time on their phone and see what I'm offering 200. Okay, here's the monthly payment. I'm offering 240. Here's the monthly payment and closing costs.
And you can adjust those taxes in there too.
Right. Yep.
So you don't have to just put what the current true taxes are. You can put in where you feel the taxes might go.
Yep.
To give you a more accurate monthly payment.
And
down
that's key. If there's something that we, from my standpoint of trying to make sure that all of our agents are training, so to speak, our buyers, is to look at that tax assessment and make sure they're planning for the increase. If this market goes wrong, or this, like local market that is, goes wrong, it's probably because of taxes. And if all these people that bought homes in the last few years don't realize that their taxes are going up and then get the sticker shock with their new mortgage payment per month. That's
Well, that's where the municipalities,
$300-$400 higher.
need to tighten their belt
Yeah,
and
I
figure
hear
out
ya.
their budget and not kill people in taxes.
Yeah, believe me, I'm in the same
But,
boat.
you
We
know.
got it on our end. We got to tell you, plan for the worst.
Exactly.
Hope for the best.
Right.
Plan for the worst. So that, when the worst case scenario happens, you're not in a position where, you're scraping money together for that extra $300 a month.
Yeah.
Because, sure, in one breath, $300 a month, but it's money. That's
Yeah.
real money right there. A real problem. So, yeah, this was good. This was a good smorgasbord of information. I like what we did, and
Yeah,
get
thanks
you
for-
on again.
Thanks for having me. Oh, I'd love to.
Scott Tantalo, Butera team, Jason Mancuso here, signing off. Give us a call, 222-SOLD anytime.
Peace.